Welcome back to another episode of the Ride or Dynasty podcast. I'm Don Detweiler, social media Sasquatch, back with you after another riveting week of NFL football and a suckfest in Pittsburgh of biblical proportions, but we'll get to that soon enough. Joining me is Kit. Kit, how you doing?
Doing well, man. I'm glad to be here.
And Brandon, back again after a couple-week hiatus. How we doing, man?
I'm good. The Bills had a nice bounce back week against the miserable Jets, so I'm back at it.
If ever you needed a get-right game, that would do it. Nothing gets the taste of failure out of your mouth like just absolutely hate beating a punching bag. Oh, I'm sorry, JJ. I did it again. Here we are, moving forward. And this week, we'll start with just a quick recap. Pittsburgh found a way to tie the winless, hapless Lions in what was an absolute travesty of a football game that nobody seemed to want to win. 2 of the 3 Steeler overtime possessions resulted in turnovers, murdering what were okay fantasy days for Pat Freiermuth and Johnson, and just leaving a bad taste in everyone's mouth. Is everything just like dogs and cats living together, total insanity in Pittsburgh, Kit?
Yeah, it's pretty rough. You know, I'm here. My father-in-law is a good example. He's not a huge fan, but like even when they were winning, he was like, they junked out some games, so that doesn't mean they're any good. So I don't know. It's been interesting. I mean, that was a shit show of a game. The weather wasn't nice, but that doesn't excuse fumbling the game away multiple times.
Yeah, man, when the homers can't even homer, you know there's something wrong. We are playing a week with no Ben Roethlisberger due to the COVID protocols, and it looks like they're preparing for week 2 of post-Ben existence here, with Mason taking the trip to the former San Diego Superchargers, now the just LA Chargers. I may never get used to saying that. Brandon, what does the Steelers' outlook look like on the road going to the left coast?
It's bleak, especially with the Chargers looking to get right, a la the Bills last week. They should have beat the Vikings last week. They've been off, especially Justin Herbert's been off a couple weeks in a row now. So I think this will be one week that they'll really try to get back on track.
Yeah, if you guys have access or a way to get Austin Eckler, I would suggest that this might be the week to get him because if you watched what Swift did to the Steelers, Eckler's better at all of those things. Let's look around the league a little bit. We had a couple of interesting quarterback situations come down. Cam came back down to Carolina. Superman back in the house and relieved an ineffective PJ Walker. Came on field, threw a touchdown, ran for a touchdown, and generally ignored their best receivers yet again. It's like he picked up exactly where they left off. What does the insertion of Cam into that offense do for pretty much most of the Carolina receivers for the rest of the season, Brandon?
Well, Robbie Anderson did score that touchdown, the passing one at the goal line. So that was nice to see for Anderson owners. But yeah, it's going to be a lower ceiling for the guys in the red zone because Cam's going to take it in because he's so good at it still. It's incredible. I think it's fun to watch him back in Carolina. And as far as the rest of the guys go, they probably, take a dip. His passing game is not where you'd want it to be if you are a DJ Moore owner or Robbie Anderson owner. It's not a great outlook.
Yeah. Is it DJ Moore no more, or is it just hang on because better times are coming?
I don't know if better times are coming this year, but I also don't know if it's that much worse than what Sam Darnold was getting over the last month before he exited, So I don't think much of Cam as an accurate passer, but he does, I think, still have a reasonably good arm. And again, Darnold was really not helping him much, even if he was targeting him. The quality of those targets were not particularly good over the last 4 or 5 starts. So I would say it's a downgrade, but not a reasonable downgrade. I don't see DJ Moore sort of hitting his ceiling like it looked like he was going to through the first month of the season, where he finally does get that 1,400 yards or something like that. But still think he's a startable player week in and week out.
Yeah, and I think to me the biggest thing in the whole game is, passing game aside, man, it was nice to see CMC do CMC things again. come out, not score a touchdown, and still hang between 24 and 30 fantasy points, depending on your scoring format, and just be his dominant game controlling self. That was the key to me for all of that. And for CMC managers, boy, that had to feel good to finally get something out of that investment, because in most formats, him going the 101 for redraft in particular, boy, it was nice to get something back. From the unfortunate situations, though, we look at one Bobby Trees coming up with the torn ACL, and the LA collection of stars continues. We have yet a galaxy gets just that much bigger with OBJ strolling on into Ramsville. What's the impact for OBJ in that offense? Kit, we'll give you this one.
Yeah, I was all ready to come and say, you know, what I didn't think was a hot take, but looking on Twitter, like it appeared like it would be a hot take, that OBJ wasn't going to be a big deal. It might demote Van Jefferson a little bit. He might catch a bomb or two, and he'll have a quarterback with a, you know, an arm and the willingness to bomb it to him deep. But I didn't expect too much. I haven't been impressed by Beckham for a number of seasons. I know there's that cut up of him being open, but that happens. He's known to not run his routes very precisely and rely on his athleticism. I think the Robert Woods tearing his ACL could definitely change that, right? Because if he does get the random Deshaun Jackson bombs combined with, you know, half of Woods targets, maybe some go to Van. As he learns the offense more and more, I think he could become a difference maker. I'm not rushing out to acquire him because I still don't know if he stays there, what his long-term fit is like, and I think he's proven to be pretty unreliable over the last 3 or 4 seasons. But I do think you could get a little bit of a boom here to finish out this year.
Yeah, according to Sleeper, Van Jefferson was the number 1 ad the past week. And what does the OBJ signing do to all those people who are able to go out and get Jefferson for next to nothing, Brandon?
Well, it means that Jefferson's going to stay the wide receiver 3. I don't think OBJ is a worse talent than Van Jefferson. I think he can still get open, and I don't see the rest of the season playing out where Van Jefferson gets more targets than Odell. He was playing with Stafford. He'd been in the building for only a few days. You know, he hadn't had much time to learn the playbook at all. So I'm going to give him a pass for last week. You know, in prime time, it wasn't the best situation, you know. So I still think Odell will be the number 2 guy with Rob Woods out, and Van Jefferson will stay the number 3 target.
Yeah, I mean, I will absolutely say that for being in the house for less than a week, to come out and catch 2 for 18, while some might slam that, was actually fairly impressive to understand enough the lingo in the playbook to be able to go out and do that on absolutely no prep time. Word also has it that he's going to be doing some kick returning. So if that matters to you in your fantasy formats, it may make the player that much more interesting to you. But realistically, it's the Cooper Kupp show. All this has done is just enable Stafford to just hang even more targets on Fun to Say Cooper Kupp. And with an offensive genius, Sean McVay, trademark, got to do it. That just gives him more and more ways to get the ball to Cooper Kupp. So here we go. Kupp owners get even richer. Lucky for you. And I even think that this week against the Niners was an anomaly. So we'll see what happens. On to other anomalies here. The WFT goes and takes down the Bucs. That's not the story, though. The real story is that Chase Young is out for the year after already having a dismal start to the season. He's now done with what is feared to be an ACL tear and possible broken bones. It's bad when the best thing is like the broken bones. What has just gone wrong for the WFT this year? Poor Washington just cannot catch a break. Kit, any ideas?
No, this is one I was very wrong on, right? I expected them to have a defense that got better from last year. I expected the offense to improve. Now they lost Fitzpatrick, who I thought, you know, could be, it's weird to say he would be the missing piece, but it seemed like already had a good line, a good running back, a good sort of decent set of weapons. You know, adding a quarterback who's just willing to throw it and competent would have been the difference maker. It has not gone like that in any facet. The line seems bad. The defense has been bad. I imagine, you know, with this, it's going to get worse. So kind of just a nightmare season over there. Gibson's has that shin fracture that, like, whether that's limiting him or it's a different reason, he's not been what people would hope. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know where they go from here. Hopefully, maybe get a reset, maybe get a top quarterback, something like that. Even though the quarterback class isn't supposed to be that elite, still probably worth it for them. See what happens.
Yeah, it's time for me to eat a little crow too because I had WFT challenging for the lead in the NFC least, and yeah, it just has not happened. It's just been a season destroyed by injury. Brandon, is there any good thing that we could take away from any of this?
Yeah, there actually is. Well, it's not for the football team. It's for two of their teams in the division. And if we're looking at the 4 weeks leading up to the fantasy championship week, which is now week 17, used to be week 16. So if we look at weeks 14 through 17, they have Dallas, Philly, Dallas, Philly. So if you have Zeke, Pollard, or any of the Eagles running backs, they could see a boost in your fantasy playoffs playing against Washington defensive line without Chase Young.
See, there we go. This is the quality analysis we come back for. Thank you. There's actually a benefit in all that madness. Aaron Jones is down possibly a week, more likely 2, with an MCL sprain. A.J. Dillon came in and comported himself excellently in that Green Bay game. Is this a portent of things to come where Dillard finally starts to get more of the share that we've been projecting for quite some time, Brandon?
Yeah, I think it is. He looked good. He looked good running inside, outside. He's gotten a couple targets, the last couple weeks, but 21 carries against the Seahawks this week, 2 touchdowns, huge week. He has the Vikings next week. And then the week after that, he has the tough Rams defensive line. But if you have A.J. Dillon, I would start him.
Definitely. I mean, there's so much love for the big man. As a Steelers fan, I just love a big back and watching those guys rumble. And with the athleticism that he has, it's impressive. Kit, as far as Green Bay goes, though, what's the outlook like here offensively? I mean, are we talking must starts for A.J. Dillon?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think so. But I do think the severity of Aaron Jones' injury might end up kind of being the worst of both worlds. I mean, obviously, you don't want a guy to get hurt more than he's been hurt, right? But like A.J. Dillon owners might get a surge here for 2 if you don't have both, right? A.J. Dillon owners who were stashing him and just hoping for the opportunity might get a nice 2-week bump here, but then and then again, not that he'll go back to being nothing, but I think Jones has earned the trust and enough of the organization to be lead back when he comes back from a 2-week injury, right? So Dillon all of a sudden becomes more borderline, and Jones owners might miss the playoffs because they don't have their key guy in 2 to 3 weeks of a very important fantasy football. So I don't know, the timetable just kind of makes it icky to me unless you have both, in which case it's like, great, I have better Dillon for a couple weeks, and then I go back to Jones.
This goes to show you folks the importance of the handcuff, especially when you have a running back that you are truly counting on. There's a reason why it matters, and you're getting a real life illustration right here. On to Baltimore, where the Lev Bell experience is no more. The bell is tolled for him, and the Ravens cut him. The fab darling of the early part of the season here, after the Eli Mitchell craze went through, whoever else had money left, most of them blew a bunch of it on Lev Bell, hoping that he would be able to take over that Baltimore backfield. His removal from the roster now leaves them with 3 backs on the roster, with Latavius Murray, Devonta Freeman, and Tyson Williams. Do any of those names stand out to any of you? Kit?
So I don't know what's going to happen when Latavius comes back, right? I think when he was there, he was ahead of Freeman. I have a little bit of a bias because 2 teams that I think of as good and are as of now playoff teams were ravaged with injury, and Devonta Freeman and not on here, but Jordan Howard kind of helped me weirdly win a week or 2 that I probably shouldn't have. So I don't know. Freeman has looked competent and has been getting a workload to make himself competent, but with Latavius out, I could see it going back to just seeing something really ugly where, you maybe get desperate, but you're not confident no matter what.
Brandon, we'll go back through the weird history of this thing where Tyson Williams came out of camp as like the dude after DK was done. And then they kind of moved away from him, even though he showed and it seemed like he was playing all right. They gave the ball to Murray far more consistently. Is Tyson just kind of the third dude here and might get a touch here or there? or is it like he's going to have more of a share now?
No, I think it's the former. I'm willing to trust John Harbaugh and his coaching staff's analysis over my eyes. And I like Tyson too, when I watched him on TV, but the snap count is all we really need to know. There's only one running back on the Ravens who matters on that team, and his initials are LJ.
No question. No question. We've been saying it all year. Would a real running back ever emerge and truly matter? And even we were saying those things when DK still had both knees completely intact. So it's one of those deals where it's like, how much are you really hanging your hopes on a Ravens running back? And the answer should be probably not a whole lot. Well, guys, that's the week around the league. Now it's time to get into this week's edition of the Fantasy Midseason Ride or Dynasty Awards. We'll go around the AFC after last week's thrilling edition of the NFC Showcase. Here is the big stuff. Now, I will remind you, folks, that we're looking for about a 30-second why you picked this person and what truly mattered in fantasy world. Now, we know that most teams don't have the MVP that's going to make it to the big show, but for the individual fantasy MVP for each team, we'll start in the AFC East. And we'll kick it off nice and easy. Brandon, we'll go to you with your Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, it should be easy, right? Josh Allen should be the easy choice. He's the number 2 quarterback in the league. He's everything you wanted. But I'm going to give a shout out to Dawson Knox. And I know he's been injured the past couple of weeks, but he has been a very solid tight end when healthy. I think he's going to return to that form very, very soon after, he returns from this hand injury. He had 5 touchdowns in the 4 weeks before he was hurt. So I expect more of that. He's a bigger body, a different type of receiver that Josh has to throw to. So Dawson Knox is my first half Bills MVP.
Yeah, he absolutely brings something different than the entire rest of the receiving core there, as most of those guys are in the smaller, faster, more dynamic category. So, yeah, it's interesting. And in this year where the tight end position was just so weird and continues to be so weird, where guys boom and then get shut out immediately after those booms. TJ Hawk hanging the 0, Mike Gesicki hanging the 0 last past week after both of them putting up substantial gains. Pitts flashing on the scene and then now kind of dipping back into his 9 to 10-ish points a game, and Kelsey not being his usual self. I mean, you could even make an argument that Andrews is the tight end one. Knox climbed up, was in the top 10 for tight ends, and provided a whole bunch of value that wasn't necessarily there previously, and finally started to pay off for some folks who had some real faith in him. All right, Kit, we'll send you to Miami for the Fins.
I think I'd have to say Jalen Waddle. He's acquitted himself nicely. I mean, some of it's been weird, like 11 catch for 70-yard type stuff. But, I mean, he's getting the volume. He's doing well. He's looking good. The fact that, he's open enough that both quarterbacks have thought, hey, this is the guy I want to be targeting. Seems to have solidified himself as an NFL receiver. Which is always a question for a rookie. And when you produce as a rookie at receiver, it usually bodes well for what that means for your career.
It was expected he would show as a rookie, and he absolutely has. He's been everything people expected of him coming out of Alabama, with 2, let's be charitable, subpar quarterbacks dealing him the ball in a strange offensive scheme for what has just been kind of a terrible year in Miami. All right, Brendan, you don't get your favorite without your least. Here come the Pats.
I had a feeling that was coming. Yeah, for the Pats, I'm also not taking the quarterback here, even though Mac Jones is the highest scorer on the team thus far. And I'm actually going with the 4th highest scorer for the first half of the season. I'm going with tight end Hunter Henry. And I say that because he is currently tight end number 3, and you drafted him much lower than that. And I don't think anybody had expectations of Hunter Henry being tight end 3 in the season so far. So I'm going to go with Henry. He's been a very pleasant surprise for anybody who owns him.
Yeah, everybody looked at that free agent deal. We're like, okay, they go and they blow a whole pile of money on Jonnu, and then they go and blow a whole nother pile of money on Hunter. And it's like, great, they just destroyed the value of both. And it's super nice to see that actually hasn't been the case, which is pretty interesting. And that Hunter has been able to emerge and continue to put up value and put up stats. A little bit of shout out here, though, for the Rook. Mac Jones, there was a lot of indecision about him coming out of Alabama. There were a lot of people who were saying, oh, he's got a noodle arm. He doesn't run around guys, doesn't have the mobility. Your boy, the social media Sasquatch here was all over it. It's almost like they drew it up. He was destined to be a Patriot. And for an offense who knows how to handle a quarterback who doesn't get around all that well, he's fit right in because he's able to throw guys open and throw into those anticipatory small windows and keep things moving. So shout out to the Rook there, Mac Jones. But I do like your pick. Henry was an interesting choice to go with. Now for a team that, well, you may have your work cut out for you, my friend. They share a stadium with your football giants, the Jets.
I think this is a pretty easy one. I think it's Michael Carter. He's slowly on a bad team, on his way to 1,250 all-purpose and 55 catches, and maybe 6 to 8 touchdowns. I don't know what it is, somewhere in that range. So, and he looks good, right? I mean, in the open field, he's making people miss. He obviously has pass catching chops. It seemed like Mike White in particular really targeted him, so maybe that doesn't continue quite as much with Wilson. But I don't know. It's promising, as a dynasty asset. He's somebody who I would gladly give up a 2022 first, unless it's like top 3, top 5 for. I think he's someone who probably count on to do better things as his career progresses.
It took him a while to figure out exactly what he was and how to utilize him, but it seems like that offense has put some substantial time into just figuring out what dudes are and what they can do for them. And it seems like they've finally found what Michael Carter's going to be good at. He's not going to be your bell cow, but you get him in space and he's electric. Gee, if only a certain college team had done that. Oh, wait, they did. Don't you love it when there's a roadmap and then teams are like, no, we're not going to do that. Oh, wait. And then circle back to it. Like, yeah, that's probably what we should have done all along.
Yeah.
All right. On to the north. Home. On to the north. We'll have a look here at the teams. We'll start with the Ravens. Brandon, take us to Baltimore, hon.
Yeah, the Ravens. I'm going Hollywood Brown. Wide receiver 7. Nobody thought he would be a consistent fantasy player ever really in his career. And it started off on just a horrible foot. And that's not a pun. He got a foot injury to start off his career. He's 6 of his 9 games this year have been at least 16 points in half PPR, which is way more than anybody expected out of Hollywood Brown.
The yardage has absolutely been there. And, you could make a small case that he should get any bit of team MVP consideration because that entire wide receiver core was absolutely decimated and they had Hollywood. And for a while that was enough, which is amazing. On to Cleveland and the Browns doing Brown things. Kit.
This is a really hard one. Like, can I say the offensive line? That's kind of what I want to say, but that's not right. I guess I'll say Nick Chubb.
I feel like you should, considering what they've done with 3 running backs.
Yeah, right. Like, no matter who it is back there, it's like I want to be starting him. Like, if it's the main guy, right? Chubb's been his regular excellent self. Frustrating in that he gets no passing work, and sometimes he'll drive 80 yards and they'll give it to Kareem Hunt at the 2. Hunt has been awesome in his role. So I don't know their running game in general. When you have the 1A, you start it with confidence and you love it,
dude. To roll 3 deep at running back like that and Durance Johnson just step in and be able to really acquit himself admirably, that kid may have got himself a job somewhere else because, I mean, he's locked out in Cleveland when everybody's healthy. He just is, but he may have become an asset for some other team, and good on him and good on the former UCF. What are they? Scarlet Knights, Golden Knights, undefeated as they wish to call themselves. On to the Bungles no more. Cincinnati has been up and down and all around. Brendan, pick a Bungle.
Yeah, this one's kind of easy for me. It's Jamar Chase. It's the rookie. He's a top 5 fantasy receiver, and the case could be made for him to be a top 5 in real life receiver. He's had just an incredible rookie year. He's shot himself up to be the favorite right now over all the quarterbacks, and probably Najee Harris to be the rookie of the year offensively in the NFL. He's just having a season for the ages, including having a game against the Baltimore Ravens with 200 yards. So he's having an all-time rookie season. He's the MVP of the first half for the Bengals.
It's fun to be able to say that it's not a slam dunk. Good for the people in Cincinnati, because you could make an argument for Joe Mixon because he's been solid all year. You could make a significant argument for Chase. You could make an argument for Joe Burrow. And Joe Burrow could be an argument for comeback player of the year. So, I mean, good for all of them. And kudos to Cincinnati for showing some stones and bucking what everybody wanted them to do and draft a tackle when they could go out and get the wide receiver who put everybody on schedule. All right. My boys, do the black and gold proud. Kit, you're up.
I think this is pretty easy. I think it's Najee, the rookie there.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
yeah. Like, you consider Deontay's still cool, but mostly based on target volume. But no, I mean, Najee for the Steelers in real life, we talked before the show, right? Like, what would the Steelers be if they couldn't rely on him? His efficiency numbers don't look great, but if you watch the games, and like I watch all of them, he's getting hit and turning -2 into +3 a lot. Like, in ways that Benny Snell and Kalen Ballage would not be doing. So yeah, I mean, for their real life prospects, and then just as a matter of fact, like, he's got 4 more years in that offense. I don't see Tomlin going anywhere. Like, even if they have to retool a quarterback, he's kind of already doing it with bad quarterbacks and a bad offensive line. So like, I feel like it's wheels up for his entire rookie contract.
Yeah, I mean, I like to hope that this is the low point and that he's only going to have better weapons as he goes forward.
Right.
Because that offensive line is, I mean, it's already slated for the rebuild. They've kind of got some of the young guys in. The rest of it's going to get retooled this offseason. And by this time next year, there could be some real horses in front of him.
Yeah.
So it'll be really impressive to see what that young man can do with legit offensive line in front of him. And averaging somewhere on the order of 26 to 28 touches a game. As he is, the volume is there. A good thing he is an absolute monster. On to the AFC South, where it's been a tale of 2 seasons for the Indianapolis Colts. Brandon, who do you got for the Colts fantasy MVP?
You get the easy ones, man.
Well, I might have a different answer than you, Kit. I have Jonathan Taylor. I know you feel strongly about the number 1 wide receiver over there, but to me, Jonathan Taylor is the definition of an MVP right now through the first half. He's the the running back 1 in all of fantasy, and that's what else do you want?
What else would you want? Go ahead, Kit. Say it.
I got a consensus among 7 contentious friends of mine who all said he is the Dynasty RB1, and like none of them had an argument against it. After this week, it's just
that and statistics say that too. So good.
But I mean Dynasty too. So like nothing seems like.
Yep. And the only argument you could possibly make about it is that Michael Pittman has not finally, in his second year, turned into the wide receiver 1 everybody had hoped for when he came out of USC. Yeah. All it took was Carson Wentz to roll in and just heap him up with targets. Well, Kit, I want to throw you a softball, but the rest of the division doesn't have one. So we'll go with the Titans. It's the closest thing you get.
I still think it's definitely Derrick Henry. I mean,
it is.
They've acquitted themselves well in the last 2 weeks without him, right? It's been some good football. It's been different. They've adjusted. Doesn't mean he wasn't the reason they were dominating, and the reason the fantasy teams he were on were 6-1, 7-2, or 6-2, 7-1, whatever they were when he went down. So I think it's still him. It probably won't be him at the end of the year. Might be Tannehill, but yeah, it's definitely him considering the chunk of the games he's played so far.
It was so nice for him to be able to pencil in 30 when you put him in the lineup. That must have been nice for those people who were fortunate enough to have him.
I didn't have a lot of ownership, and playing against him was always just terrifying. It was
it was bad.
And I could have an advantage at 6 other positions, and then just be like, well, but he could wipe all that out with one like a big Derrick Henry game.
Yep. And both Julio and AJ have been inconsistent, injured in both. Right. So yeah, it's got to be Henry, and it'll be an interesting second half to see what happens. All right, on to the clown shows. Down to Jacksonville we go, where we have a former really good college coach turned scumbag, probably always was, penciling in an offense in crayon. Tell us about the Jags.
Yeah, for me, it's James Robinson, and he started off slow, but then got hot and stayed consistently hot, and had an injury a couple weeks ago, but he was right back at it last week, scoring a touchdown. So he's the fantasy MVP. Although I will give a shout out to Jamal Agnew, double digits in 3 of the last 4 weeks. So good on him.
Golf clap to Agnew, absolutely right. And once they got that Carlos Hyde nonsense out of their system and just gave the rock to James, it was a much more competitive Jags team all the way around. Oh, Kit. That's all right. There's a softball here. Give us the Texans.
Yeah, I think there's only one answer. It's Brandon Cooks. I think he's registered for 20 in PPR, right? I mean, doing it less in the bad Davis Mills games. Davis Mills, there was like one weird good game and then a lot of trash. So in the games where he threw for 130 yards, Cooks maybe only had 454, but he's definitely been the lone bright spot that I see on the team.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know who else you're going to put in that unless you're desperate. The running backs, none of them get enough touches to really be relevant.
Right.
There isn't another receiver that's getting targeted anywhere near enough to be relevant. The tight ends do the exact same thing, and that's just a really bad offense all the way around. Time to go out west, where it's a division of all kinds of turmoil, shenanigans, and so many questions. Let's head to Denver and Teddy business decision. I mean, Bridgewater rolling in after such a wonderful attempt at a tackle there on the weekend, trying to preserve a game for them against the Eagles. Teddy picked himself, but he's probably not the way we're going to lean. Brandon, who are you going to give the MVP for fantasy first half?
Yeah, it's been a weird year for the Broncos, right? With the receiver injuries and Courtland Sutton not really getting targets when Judy's been on the field. But I'm going to go with Melvin Gordon. He's been consistent in most of the games. He's scored a bunch of touchdowns. Javonte looks good when he's out there, but is not his time just quite yet. The first half belonged to Melvin Gordon. He edged him out a little bit.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, Javonte's time is definitely coming, and he's building and looking better and better. The offensive line has just been so banged up that it's been hard for any of the running backs really to get a whole lot of traction and a whole lot of consistency. Courtland Sutton's been what he's been. Jerry Jeudy has been hurt for the majority of it. And how about a little love for Tim Patrick, the always overlooked and yet somehow always seems to produce? He's a lot like JJ's boy Zach Pascal in that he always seems to come up relevant. All right, we've done the Broncos. It's on to Vegas. The Raiders have had quite an interesting start. We had an early season blow up for Waller, who was just monstering it for 2 weeks and then has kind of faded back to the pack. We've had the Ruggs incidents throughout and that tragedy, but there's been Captain Consistent at the helm. Kit, who do you think you're going to pick for the MVP for the Raiders?
Captain Consistent. I mean, they're playing, Monday's game aside, where I don't think you could Sunday's game aside, where I don't think you could argue that it was his fault, right, that they lost. The offense couldn't really get it going. But no, Carr's been very good. He's similar to Najee, right, in that I think he's been, you put a lot of other quarterbacks on that team and they lose a lot more games. I think he holds together a lot of the things. I don't think much of Josh Jacobs. I guess the line has been decent, even though they lost pieces. But no, he's just been good. He's kind of worked with whatever he had on the field at the time. From a fantasy perspective, I think he's QB 14. I know I have him as my QB 2 in a lot of leagues, and then I've just been ecstatic. There might be 1 week where he disappointed me, but that's fine for a QB 2. So yeah, I think he kind of is the tide that elevates all boats or whatever, and has kept them afloat, made them relevant.
Yeah, he's been nothing but consistent. He's been very good throughout. And boy, it would be fun. He's starting to wind up in that territory, but where it would be fun to see him with some actual legit weapons and a normal offensive coordinator and some form of consistency around him, because it feels like he's just never had that in his turmoil.
like him on the Broncos now would actually be a fun. I mean,
that actually would be really fun.
But like in terms, I think he's not obviously like Aaron Rodgers in the Broncos, but it could still be a cool, what
it would be. That would be a really interesting fit with those wide receivers and that trio they have there, the two good tight ends. If they could just get a healthy offensive line, a good running game, boy, that would be an interesting fit.
Yeah, it'd be fun.
All right, on to the two front runners for the West. Brendan, will give you the charge.
I am going to go with Eckler. He has been the RB3 for fantasy on the season. He's been incredible. But I am going to shout out Mike Williams. If we were doing this a month ago, he would get the first quarter MVP. But he hasn't had a double-digit week since week 5, so he gets disqualified for me.
I'm with you all the way around. This has been an interesting offense. They've gone through a lull the last couple of weeks, but Eckler has been right there throughout. Allen has kind of stepped it up a little bit later, but he's turning in those good games. He hasn't had the huge game yet. I feel like that's probably coming. And Justin Herbert, for those of you who are fortunate enough to have him, man, just enjoy that for the next 10 because he's just going to be a monster. They just have to get the rest of the pieces in line around him. And right now they're suffering from just a dreck of a defense that's injured its way out of really being what they could be. Kit, you complained about not having any great ones. Here you go. The Chiefs are yours.
I actually was dreading this. I was really hoping that Brendan would get the Chiefs and I get the Chargers. I would have said Eckler too, by the way, despite my love for Mike Williams. But this is tough just because, the big three had such sky-high expectations. CEH's expectations have risen back up. They're not there. I guess I'll go with Kelsey because – despite a little bit of a lull, he really rebounded on Sunday night. And now if you look at his overall body of work through half the season, it's like, oh yeah, he's amazing in the tight end one. There might have been a little lull there. There might have been some games that he didn't look himself, but Mahomes wasn't looking himself either. I would say on the whole, you're happy to have any of the three of those players, Mahomes, Hill, or Kelsey, but you're mildly disappointed maybe. So yeah, that's kind of where I'd land, I guess.
Oh, how we are spoiled when the tight end 1, quarterback 2, and wide receiver 2 are disappointments.
Is Tyreek 2 too? All right.
Yeah, maybe 2 and Mahomes is 1.
Maybe I bought the narrative.
Three-way tie.
Maybe I bought the narrative too much. I don't know, but it just felt like being a Kelsey person. I got concerned. I don't know, in a Mahomes person, you get concerned.
But the fact of the matter is, you're absolutely right, and they've been failing the eye test, turning in subpar week after subpar week, where they've been scoring in the teens. The offensive line rebuild has definitely not gone their way, and the tackles are just miserable. The guys they picked up in the middle of that line have been playing very well, and Mahomes is able to step up. But, the tackles are just allowing instant pressure, and he's just, when you have to move a quarterback off their spot, even one as efficient, rocket-armed and mobile as Mahomes, it still affects the play, and that's just shown out time and time again. This past week, they weren't able to get the pass rush like they had been, and you just see Mahomes just absolutely picking apart a defense to hang the 500 yards and 5 TDs. That turned into a 48-point, at least in my scoring format, week for him. So, good on Mahomes to turn it around and right the ship. Maybe some of it has to do with they think they have a newborn in the house that affects everyone's sleep patterns and life patterns and everything patterns, as any mother or father out there now knows. All right, on to the special awards. This is where we kind of take a further step back and look at individual performances throughout the conference for those who have proven themselves exceptional. And we'll start with the rookie first half of the year. The candidates thus far are 1, Najee Harris. I'm not biased at all. This is legit because he's been phenomenal. The running back 4 in most formats and number 15 overall fantasy performer has come out and been absolutely ridiculous, and to average 3.7 yards per touch behind that dreck of an offensive line, and then go for weeks where he's had as many as an unbelievable 12 plus targets is just showcasing the ridiculous range of skills the young man has. Jamar Chase, candidate number 2, has been better than advertised, and all the fears for the terrible preseason have absolutely disappeared into an outstanding rookie installment of what will be a long career for that young man, with former roommate, probably current roommate, and now probably had her life mate, Joe Burrow. Those guys have to be joined at the hip, and good for them because it's come down to wide receiver 5 and number 23 overall in most fantasy formats. Good for Jamar Chase and outstanding for the Cincinnati faithful. And then Mac Jones, quarterback 20, number 48 overall in all of fantasy, but doing it with literal nothing around him. Good for that young man. Kit, we'll start with you. Who are you giving your nomination for the AFC Rookie of the Year?
Yeah, so I don't think there's a wrong answer here. Like, even if you said Mac Jones, I think he's established that he's going to be a long-term starter. I mean, when you get the NFL that quickly and you can master an offense as complex as theirs right away and be competent, I think that, means you're going to be around for a while. And so Superflex, QBs are really valuable, especially when they're young and going to hold their job. So I could see an argument there. I'm going to pick Harris. I'm going to pick Harris because what I talked about a little bit earlier, so not to be redundant, right? That, like you said, we hope this is the worst surrounding talent that he actually has, and he's getting it done on volume. Like the upside of, he's got Jonathan Taylor upside, right? In terms of volume and talent around him, or better even, right? Because he catches more passes. So he's my guy. Jamar Chase, very impressive. If you have him, you're very happy where you picked him. He has done it differently of late, but he did have like multi 50+ yard scores. I want to say 3, which like to some extent I think is inflating quite how well he's done. Like, not to say that he's not done amazing and acquitted himself of any drop concerns and things like that, and proved himself to be the dynasty asset people thought he could be. But I think if you look at an average season, most seasons probably won't catch quite as many long balls for touchdowns.
Brandon, who's your guy?
I wanted to play devil's advocate, but I'm going with Najee Harris, and a little bit of a different reason for me. I just think the running back position is more scarce, and especially now with injuries to key guys like Henry, if you can get that elite back, you have that much more of a chance to wear the crown at the end of the year.
Gentlemen, I absolutely agree, and I agree with you. It is because position scarcity. I mean, Jamar Chase has gone from Mr. Long Ball to Mr. Route Runner and been able to just do a little bit of everything. But there are so many wide receivers that are fantasy relevant, and there's that large cluster anywhere between wide receiver 12 and wide receiver like 30-ish, where those guys can be basically interchangeable on a given week, depending on matchup and everything else. But the bell cow back is functionally an endangered species in the NFL these days. And yet here we have it in rookie Najee Harris.
Yeah.
So for me, he's got to be the first half. I won't be surprised at all if we're sitting here at the end looking at a ridiculous usage figure, but him still being the fantasy overall. And for those of you in auction leagues, if you were able to get him on the relative cheap, great for you. The most surprising award goes to an individual player here who has definitely overstepped their preseason hype. These guys have just burst out and absolutely carried their teams and done far more than expectation. And there's no surprise that all 3 are wide receivers for the nominees. Nominee number 1, Hollywood Marquise Brown in Baltimore, has absolutely carried the ship, coming in at wide receiver 7 as of now and number 30 overall, depending on your scoring format. Hollywood Brown has just absolutely carried the offense and the passing side for the Ravens, giving them the field stretching capability that they so desperately need to be able to get the underneath stuff to the remaining cast. Michael Pittman of Indianapolis now coming in at wide receiver 8, but has been as high as wide receiver 6, depending on your scoring format, has just absolutely blossomed from his promising rookie year in the presence of Carson Wentz to come in now wide receiver 8 and number 34 overall. And Mike Williams started off the season in phenomenal fashion for the LA Chargers. Tailed off a little bit, but it's entirely possible that the second half resurgence is just right around the corner. Gentlemen, Kit will give you your first vote. Most surprising award.
So I already knew Michael Pittman and Mike Williams were really good even before this season. So the surprising thing to me is Marquise Brown. No, but I do think I can say about all of them, right? I think Pittman has benefited from no Paris Campbell and no T.Y. Hilton, both of whom they expected to be there. So like he might, wide receiver 8 might be like not his long-term sustainable outcome. But I left Hollywood for dead for the most part, right? I mean, I wasn't trying to acquire him. I didn't actively trade him away because I figured he was one of those sunken assets you just kind of live with in the two teams that have him on. But yeah, I did not expect this. The volume is, been what you'd like. And even Rashad Bateman returning and looking good hasn't really hurt him. So that's been interesting. I still think, to some extent it's on the back of some long plays, but he's a deep ball type of player. He gets behind the defense, and the threat of that running game makes that sort of something that's conducive to their offenses, play action and bombs and fake runs and things like that. So, he's been surprising, but I think good chance it's here to stay.
Brandon.
I have the same answer. I didn't really believe in Hollywood, especially after that early career foot injury, like I mentioned earlier, and he's been nothing but surprising. So that's the award for Hollywood, and he's just been a little bit better than Pittman this year. So he's the one for me.
Yep, you boys nailed it. Hollywood Brown all the way. I had him penciled in coming into the season as a best ball guy and or a bye week fill-in kind of player, and he has outperformed those expectations to the nth degree. On to the most disappointing category. Now, we try to exclude players for injury purposes here and include players so that we were hoping for the best, thought we were primed for a breakout, and then just didn't get it. We'll start in Miami with one Tua Tagovailoa, who did not do anything we hoped. We had hoped that this would be the year that it was going to be his show, that he would be healthy and that he'd be able to distribute the ball to a talented cast of wide receivers, including Jalen Waddle, to go with Fuller and Parker, and none of that's really come to fruition. The young man is kicking in at quarterback 29 and number 109 overall, and really just not passing the eye test in any way, shape, or form. Chase Claypool also makes the list here because we thought the sky was the limit after last year's just storming of the gates onto the rookie scene. We thought the big man would be able to get all the combat catches, go up and be a prime target for Ben, and it just has not happened to the tune of wide receiver 46. It was expected so much more for him. And then CEH down at running back 58-9. Yeah, he's missed some time with injury, but he played enough of the first half that we kind of have to look at it like we really hoped that this was going to be the deal, that he was going to be able to get the drop-offs, be able to be a factor in the passing game, and then be effective in the run game, and none of that has come to fruition. So, Kit, give me your most disappointing.
So given it's a Dynasty podcast, I would say Tua, because quarterbacks get moved on from quick, and I think he looked better, because a couple games for his finger injury and then in relief in the last game. I still feel like it's been shaky enough that if he has a string of 3 or 4 bad starts to end this year, that'll be the end of his tenure in Miami. I really believe that. Now they gave up picks, so maybe they're in a worse position to do that. I thought it was foolish of them in the first place. Claypool, has been injured. Has been working with Ben's noodle arm. I don't think anything that has happened this year would make me think he's not going to be a good player long term. He still wins those physical catches. He still provides a plus asset that teams need. I mean, whether he becomes DK Metcalf or more of a wide receiver 3 who catches a lot of touchdowns, who knows? I can see the argument for CEH, mostly because Darrell Williams has acquitted himself so well in CEH's absence that I could see this going back to being something pretty ugly the second half of the year. I think there's 2 arguments I've seen. One which is oh, look at the Darrell Williams usage. CEH is going to come right back to this, which I don't buy. It's no, Darrell Williams has shown he can do some things and understands the offense. Even though CEH looked good before his injury, maybe he'll get it. But 2 is the one who's at the risk of being sort of a 0, I think, sooner rather than later.
Brandon.
Yeah, I have a bit of a different answer here, and that's because this isn't really the 3-year outlook award. This is the first half.
Okay.
We're just looking at 10 weeks, so I'm giving it to Claypool. He's been the most disappointing. I say that because Clyde had 2 very good weeks and then got hurt, so he's disqualified for me. Tua, kind of the same thing. Week 1, 16 points, not terrible, not great. Got hurt for the next 4 weeks. Next 3 weeks after that, 21.5 points. That's pretty good. 26.5 points. That's very good. 16 points. It's fine. Got hurt again. Didn't play against Houston, played the second half against Baltimore and scored 12.5 points. So coming off in relief in just the second half of the game. So I think he's been, fine when he's been on the field, and I'm not going to disqualify him, because of injury. So Claypool gets it for me.
For me, it's CEH. I expected so much more out of CEH coming out and just really showing that he deserved a place. Year 2 should be where that running back really takes a part in that offense. And even when he was really kind of starting to produce, he wasn't. Some of this may be some bias about where he was and where the hype train for him was, and that he's just never really fit into that Chiefs offense. But I think some of that is that no running back is ever going to fit into that Chiefs offense the way we had kind of dreamed it when CEH landed there. So I think some of that's on us and the evaluators a little bit, but it's still a colossal disappointment. And I'm glad that I had moved on from him in the offseason. So that panned out. For those who kept or those who acquired, look, I get where you were going from, and it makes total sense. It really does. It's very easy to rationalize. It just hasn't played out. Our next award is the Denny Green Award. They are who we thought they were award. This award goes out to individuals who met their ADP expectation, which is so often so hard to do. We come in with these guys in redraft or in dynasty drafts and startups with high expectations that these first or second round dudes, maybe even third round dudes, are going to carry our franchise until the next wave comes up. And those hype and those hopes often get dashed so easily for the hype that goes into the individual players. Now, my nominees are going to be Pat Mahomes, because we had hoped so much for this season coming in that this was going to be yet another rock star season. Oh, wait, I'm complaining about a quarterback 2 season again. But if you looked at it, if you happen to be a player or a fantasy player who is fortunate enough to get Mahomes on your squad, there's been weeks that have left you wanting compared to what have been, and that's just kind of not him. But still, we wanted quarterback 1, 2, or 3. We're getting that. Even in a down year, we're getting quarterback 2. So for me, he's in the category of he is who we thought he was. Josh Allen is the next candidate here. Dude is expected to be a fantasy monster and has lived up to the hype. Quarterback 2, number 3 overall. He can run. He can throw. He does it all. He's a monster. And then John Taylor, the running back extraordinaire for Indianapolis. Captain consistency. You know you're getting 20 points a week. You might even get 30. You're not getting 10. You're getting at least 20. Those consistency things matter. Brandon, you've got the short end of the stick for going first. This time it's up to you. You're welcome to go off the reservation if you want. Who's your guy?
That's all right. I'm going to keep this simple, and I'm going to vote with an extreme bias here and pick my boy Josh Allen, number 17. He's just been a fantasy MVP. He's been incredible, exactly what we thought. He is looked at as having, a worse year on the field as last year, but his stats through 9 games are nearly identical in basically all facets. So it's Josh Allen for me, but props to the other guys.
I even like the steps he's taken as a quarterback because he's distributing the ball more, and it's not just digs left, digs right, digs center, rinse, repeat. Kit, who's your guy?
So, yeah, I think Mahomes, I just want to put him at Mahomes. Like, it's interesting he's on this list because I just feel like I am being greedy, wanting better than QB2, but I also feel like, I don't know, I don't use keep, trade, cut, but I do like as a barometer for what I would do, but I do like to check in on it. And I feel like, I'm just guessing here, if you looked at Pat Mahomes' pre-week 1 value and his value now, that it would be like a full first-round pick less. That's just a little bit of speculation, but he finally looked human, right? Which he has not looked for his entire career.
That's true.
Even for only a couple game stretch, like even if it's not a big thing. My answer is JT, though. I mean, like, it's what I thought it was. I mean, it's what I thought he could be for sure, right? They have a good offensive line. He's 225 and a track star. If he just got a little bit of vision and nuance, he was always set up to be a stud, and he seemed to have developed that. Lock it and load it for years to come.
Dude, and to be this guy with a banged up offensive line, bear in mind that all world guard has been in and out of the lineup and is now back in, but and playing well, but we had a start of the season with no Nelson. So that dude is an absolute mauler and man animal. So JT has been captain consistent. And as someone who fully values consistency, man, I'll take Taylor. So he's going to be my vote. The overall AFC MVP, being the host, I have in the show document notes that it's the host privilege to select. So I'm just going to take this one. Enjoy this, fellas. You get the segment off, so just hang out. There is only one answer, and it's Derrick Henry. He was an absolute monster. He was on a record pace even for himself. And like, yo, that's saying something, because he's a gentleman who has possessed so many rushing records and was just an absolute monster. He was the sole reason that Tennessee was relevant and got them out of the woods to the point now where they can hopefully maintain that competitiveness in his stead, because the two wide receivers are finally basically healthy again and the offense is starting to click a little bit. But boy, that first half, he was an absolute stud, and rosters that included him smoked rosters that didn't, and it was that simple. So for me, the fantasy first half AFC MVP has to be Derrick Henry, and I will hear no arguments because there are none to be made. But we'll close out our special awards with the humble brag segment. This is one for us where we get to be right about something. So we make so many predictions, and part of the deal with being a podcaster like this is that we put ourselves out there and we make so many guesses. Sometimes we're right and sometimes things don't go so well. But let's take the humble brag approach, and it's time for one that we got right. And Brendan, will let you go first. Give us one that you got right.
I got Baker Mayfield right, and it feels great. Baker is not a good-looking quarterback when he's out in the field. He's not a good fantasy quarterback. He's not even a top 20 quarterback right now, and that's hard to do behind that offensive line with that run game, with those weapons. It's remarkable that he hasn't progressed since his rookie year. Week 1, they were smoking Kansas City for most of the game, and it was looking like the Browns were a team, to be reckoned with. And he actually had over 300 yards, which is a rare sight for him. But he finished the fantasy game with 12.6 points. So that's what you get from Baker Mayfield, and it feels great to be right.
Give us your humble brag award.
So I'm still going to say Mike Williams. I understand the detractors, right? He hasn't been good since week 5. So it's been quite a stretch here. And that might be because, as announcers keep alluding to and comments keep alluding to, he banged up his knee, which isn't an excuse, right? Because that's always been an issue with him. It could just be like, oh, now he has a wonky knee for the rest of the season. The only thing I'd say is his 3 worst games over the last 4 weeks. He had one game with 60 or 59 yards, I think, and then 3 even bigger duds. Justin Herbert played terrible in all of those games, right? He had 220 or less passing yards in all 3, 2 sub 200-yard passing games. So the offense was not cooking. Yes, Allen got his and Eckler got his dump-offs, but it feels like I still think there's evidence that when this offense is a top-end offense, as it should be, Mike Williams is the strong, third option behind Eckler, but second downfield option, and no one else has really emerged to challenge him for that, I don't think. So to me, it's just a matter of, good matchups, Herbert getting a little bit right, which I do believe he will, to go back to, if not, top 5, top 10 numbers like he was doing, pretty consistent week in and week out startability as your wide receiver too.
So to complete the trifecta here, my humble brag is going to myself for Jamar Chase, because all through the draft process, I write some mock drafts and stuff, and I was absolutely slaughtered all the time when I kept saying the Bengals will take Jamar Chase over and over, and everybody's no, Penei Sewell. Given the choice, and they had it at the draft, it was Chase. The Squatch called it. And thank goodness that he backed my butt up, because I went out on the limb, and it made so much sense that they would take Penei Sewell. I mean, let's face it, the dude was all world coming out and has acquitted himself very effectively for the Lions. But when you have an opportunity to take the game breaker, game changer, and a dude who grew up with your quarterback, you do it. And it made so much sense, especially because the year prior, people forgot, and this is the thing that got overlooked, was they had already invested the number 12 overall pick in a tackle from USC the year before, who missed the majority of his rookie season with a knee injury. He's come back and acquitted himself well in Williams. And that line, while it hasn't been world-beating, has been adequate enough to keep Burrow upright enough to keep things going. Yeah, they'll add to it. They absolutely will. They have to. But when you have the opportunity to complete an offensive set, and now you look at that 3 dynamic wide receiver skill set, a good tight end is CJ Uzomah, and then Mixon in the back end, it only made sense to put Chase with his college quarterback and fix it all up. So the humble brag goes to Chase and me for nailing that pick, because boy, I was sweating it a while. All right, boys. Great job as per usual, and wonderful effort going through. Let's do the survivor picks. I'll give you one. The Lions, after, well, if you took the Steelers against the Lions, you're good because they didn't lose. So technically you survive. This comes up just about every 3 years in survivor pools where this happens. Most rules will allow you to move on with a tie. I'm going to go back to the well, though, and I'm going to take the Browns hosting the Lions. The Lions are getting 10.5, and I'm going to take the Browns, and I'm going to take the Browns to go with the over on that. Kit, who do you got for the Survivor Land?
Yeah, I got the Titans. I fully expect the Bucs to smash the Giants, given coming off of 2 bad losses where they're frisky. But the Giants have gotten frisky once or twice before in games, and the Bucs have screwed up of late. So I guess to stay away from that one. Haven't seen anything good from the Texans yet, and the Titans seem to be on a roll. So that seems like the easiest match for me.
Brandon, who you got?
Yeah, Kit just mentioned it. I would not want to be Patrick Graham, the Giants defensive coordinator, next week. It is on Monday Night Football. I think Tom Brady's going to come back with a vengeance.
Yeah. Monday Night Football and angry Brady.
Over under 4 TD passes.
Might want to take the over on that, boys.
Over.
Might want to take the over. Big weekend in college football coming in. All kinds of interesting matchups. I'm going to give you one that you got to watch. Michigan State. Sparty goes into Ohio State to the Horseshoe. Ohio State is giving away 19 to Sparty. I like Sparty, man. Go Sparty, go. If anybody is going to give Ohio State a run, it's Sparty. Brandon, you got a game that's looking interesting to you?
There are some other ones. I mean, Bama's not going to lose to Arkansas.
Or are they? No, they're
not. They're not going to. I'm gonna piggyback off yours just because the NFL talent that we're going to see in Michigan State, Ohio State is going to be abundant with Heisman candidate Kenneth Walker against all the guys that Ohio State has.
Yeah, Walker, absolutely. The 2 stud wide receivers for Ohio State, a plethora of defensive talent that is loaded with Devy potential, as is the Bama and Arkansas game. I mean, Arkansas's got Treylon Burks going against a really good defense. Young is probably now front running the 2023 class of quarterbacks. Bama hosts yet again first round talent at wide receiver in Williams, and probably a 2nd or 3rd round running back you need to know in Robinson. They're loaded again. Yay, Bama. Kit, you got anybody out there that looks interesting?
That was it. I think it'll be fun to watch Burks operate against that defense. Can't see Bama losing at home as much as Arkansas has flashed a little bit, although they've trailed off recently. So yeah, that's the one. I'd pick Bama on that, and we'll enjoy watching it.
The other one I'll give you is an out west special. Oregon, number 3, goes into 24 Utah. Utah has a very stout defense and a stellar inside linebacker that you need to pay attention to. And then Thibodeau on the left end is just a man animal. So it should be an interesting showcase. All right, fellas, time for tags. Brandon, lead us off.
I am on Twitter at BCTaff, and check out rideordynasty.com for a bunch of great articles.
Kit.
You can find me on Twitter at KitV_DynastyFF and on Reddit at KitKit123. Also check out our sister podcast, Next Man Up.
I'm the social media Sasquatch, so if you need me, you can get me at Rider Dynasty. Tweet the channel. The boys would be thrilled to read anything you send on the air for us. And as embarrassing as it may be, it'll be there. So there you go. I promise I won't stop humble bragging. This is going to happen. So here we go, folks. Again, enjoy the games. You've made your decisions. You know what your teams are and aren't at this point. Make trades that make sense for you, but don't get over ambitious. Remember, if you go all in now, you could handicap yourself for 2 or 3 years down the pike. So make yourself a good evaluation of what the rest of the league is looking like. Depending on where your trade deadlines fall, this is where silly season starts and things start to really heat up. So make sure that you are looking down the road, because if you trade away 2 or 3 firsts, you better win now. Good luck to you all, Riders. We're pulling for you. Catch you next week.
Peace.